Nadine here. I am just getting ready to put on 17 to 21 of Dante's Divine Comedy. My lighting's not very good here. You'd think that would be better, considering I've got the light pointed straight at me. Still kind of dark. Oh well, my hands are good, at least until I get my my notifications sent out. Anyway, so what I am going to do today is I'm going to, since it's St. Patty's Day, I'm going to take and do a few themed items from out of this friendship bracelet cotton. And I just realized all my stuff is way far away. So I got most of it I get at Walmart, but sometimes I get it somewhere else. But it's just the single strand stuff you can get for making friendship bracelets and whatever. And once in a while you find it for a decent price. This is JP Coats. And I have some JP Coats and then a few other brands. It's whatever I can manage to get my hands on. So I was going to do some, like I said, some St. Patty's Day stuff and listen to some more of Dante's Inferno, 17 to 21. Okay, let's get that started.
Section 17 of the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, translated by Courtney Langdon. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Inferno, Canto 17. The Seventh Circle, the Third Ring. Violence against Art. Usurers.
Behold the wild beast with the pointed tail, which, crossing mountains, breaks through walls and armour. Behold who sickens all the world with stench.
My leader thus began to speak to me, and signalled to it to approach the edge, near where the marble we had traversed ended, and that foul image of deceit came on, and landed on the bank its head and chest. But o'er the edge it drew not up its tail. Its face was as the face of a just man, so pleasing outwardly was its complexion. The body of a serpent all the rest. 2 paws it had, all hairy to the armpits. Its back and breast, as well as both its sides, were painted o'er with snares and wheel-like shields. Ne'er with more colours in its woof and warp did Turks or Tartars manufacture cloth, nor by Arachne were such webs designed. As flatboats sometimes lie upon the shore, in water partly, partly on the land, and as among the greedy Germans yonder the beaver seats himself to wage his war, so lay that worst of beasts upon the edge which closes in the sandy plain with stone. All of its tail was quivering in the void, and twisting upward its envenomed fork, which like a scorpion's weapon armed its tip.
Our path must turn aside a little now,
my leader said to me,
until we reach that wicked beast reclining over there.
Around our right breast, therefore, we went down and took 10 paces on the very edge, thus surely to avoid both sand and fire. And after we had come to it, I saw, upon the sand a little further on, some people sitting near the precipice. My teacher then,
That thou mayst take with thee a full experience of this ring, go on, and see the nature of the life they lead. There be thy conversation brief. Meanwhile, till thou return, I'll talk with this wild beast, that its strong shoulders may be yielded us.
Thus further on, along the outer edge of that 7th circle, all alone I went, to where the melancholy people sat. Out of their eyes their woe was bursting forth. First here, then there, they helped them with their hands, now from the flame, now from the heated soil. Not otherwise do dogs in summer time, now with their paws, and with their muzzles now, whene'er by fleas or flies or gadflies bitten. When on the face of some I set mine eyes, on whom the woeful fire is falling there, I knew not one of them, but I perceived that from the neck of each there hung a pouch, which had a certain colour and design, wherewith their eyes appeared to feed themselves. And as I, looking, came into their midst, azure upon a yellow pouch I saw, which had the form and semblance of a lion. Then, as my gaze continued on its course, another I beheld, as red as blood, exhibiting a goose more white than butter. And one of them, who had his small white pouch emblazoned with an azure pregnant sow, said to me,
What dost thou in this our ditch? Now go thy way, and since thou livest still, know that my fellow townsman, Vitaliano, will sit beside me here upon my left. I, with these Florentines, a Paduan am, and very frequently they stun my ears by shouting, Let the sovereign knight arrive, who'll bring with him the pocket with 3 beaks.
Herewith his mouth he twisted, sticking out his tongue, as doth an ox that licks its nose. And I, afraid lest any longer stay might anger him who warned me to be brief, turned from those weary spirits back again. I found my leader, who had climbed already upon the back of that fierce animal, and said to me,
Now be thou strong and bold. By stairs like these shall we descend hereafter. Climb thou in front, for midst I wish to be, so that the tail may do no injury.
like one with quartan fever's chill so near that pale already are his fingernails, and that but looking at the shade he shudders. Such at the words he uttered I became. But that shame made its threats to me, which renders a servant strong when in a good lord's presence. As on those horrid shoulders I sat down, I wished to tell him, See that thou embrace me. My voice, however, came not as I thought. But he who succoured me at other times and other straits, as soon as I was up, encircled and sustained me with his arms. And then he said,
Now, Geryon, move thou on. Wide be thy wheels, and gradual thy descent. Bethink thee of the unwonted load thou hast.
As from its mooring place a little boat backs slowly out, even so did he withdraw, and when he wholly felt himself in play, to where his breast had been, he turned his tail and moved the latter, stretched out like an eel, while with his paws he gathered in the air. I do not think that there was greater fear when Phaeton let go his horse's reins, whereby, as still appears, the sky was burned, nor yet when wretched Icarus perceived his back unfeathering through the melting wax, while, calling him, his father cried, Thou hold'st an evil course, than mine was, when I saw that I was in the air on every side, and gone the sight of all things save the beast. The latter, swimming, slowly wends his way, wheels and descends, but I perceive it not, save by the wind below and in my face. The waterfall I now heard on the right, making a horrid roar beneath us. Hence I outward thrust my head with eyes turned down. More fearful of the abyss I then became, for fires I now beheld and wailings heard. Hence trembling I clung closer with my thighs, and then, for I perceived it not before, by the great torments which on divers sides drew near, I saw our wheeling and descent. Even as a falcon long upon the wing, which, without seeing lure or game bird, makes the falconer say, Alas, thou comest down, descendeth weary, through 100 rings, whence he had swiftly started, and alights far from his lord in angry sullenness. So likewise Geryon set us down below, close to the bottom of the rough-hewn rock, and of our persons rid, as fast as flies an arrow from a bowstring, sped away.
End of Inferno, Canto 17. Section 18 of the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, translated by Courtney Langdon. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Inferno, Canto 18. The 8th Circle, Fraud. The 1st Trench, Panders and Seducers. The 2nd Trench, Flatterers and Prostitutes.
A place there is in hell called Male Bolge, wholly of stone, and of an iron hue, as is the round wall which encircles it. Right in the midst of its malicious field yawneth a well exceeding wide and deep, of whose construction, in its place, I'll speak. Round therefore is the girdle which remains between the well and that hard high wall's base, and 10 great trenches subdivide its bed. As is the appearance which, where many moats encircle castles for the wall's protection, the section where they are presents, such was the one those trenches furnished here. And just as in such fortresses small bridges stretch from their thresholds to the outmost bank, so crags ran from the bottom of the cliff across the banks and trenches to the well, which gathering them together cuts them off. In this place then we found ourselves, when dropped from Gerion's back. The poet thereupon held to the left, and I behind him moved. Upon the right side I beheld new cause for sympathy, new pains, and scourges new, wherewith the first trench was completely filled. Down at its bottom naked were the sinners. This side the middle facing us they came, beyond it with us, but with quicker steps. Means such as those which at the Jubilee the Romans took, because of its great throng, to have the people pass across the bridge, who toward the castle all on one side face, and toward St. Peter's go their way, while all move toward the mountain on the other edge. This side and that, upon the dark stone floor, horned demons with great scourges I beheld, who from behind were fiercely whipping them. Ah, how they caused them to lift them up their heels, when by the first blows smitten. Certainly none waited for the second or the third. While I was going on, mine eyes were met by one of them, and instantly I said, I fast not from a previous sight of him. To make him out I therefore stayed my feet, and having stopped with me, my gentle leader assented to my going back a little. That scourged one thought that he could hide himself by looking down, but little it availed him. For, thou that castest down thine eyes, said I, unless the features which thou hast are false, venedico caccianimico art. But what brings thee into such pungent sauces? And he to me,
Unwillingly I tell it, but forced I am by thy transparent speech, which makes me recollect the olden world. I was the one who led Giso la Bella to do according to the Marquis's will, however the disgusting tale be told. Nor am I here the only Bolognese that weeps. Nay, this place is so full of us that not so many tongues are taught today between Savena and Reno to say pipa. And if thereof thou wouldst have pledge or proof, recall to mind our avaricious breasts.
As thus he spoke, a demon with his lash smote him, and said to him,
Pander, be gone. There are no women here to sell for coin.
I then rejoined my escort, whereupon, when we had taken some few steps, we came to where a crag projected from the bank. This we ascended with the greatest ease, and turning to the right along its ridge, we left those everlasting circling walls. When we were where it hollows out below, to let the scourged pass through, my leader said,
Now stay thy steps, and on thee let the sight of all these other ill-born spirits strike, whose faces thou hast not perceived as yet, because they've gone with us in our direction.
As from the ancient bridge we watched the troop, which on the other side was toward us coming, and which the scourge was likewise driving on. Without my asking, my good teacher said,
Look at that great man there, who, as he comes, for all his pain, seems not to shed a tear. How royal an appearance he still keeps. Jason is he, who, by his doughtiness and wit, deprived the Colchians of their ram. He passed the Isle of Lemos on his way, after its pitiless and daring women had given up to death their every male. With tokens of his love and flattering words, he there deceived the maid Hypsipyle, who previously had all the rest deceived. He left her there with child, and all alone. Him to this punishment that fault condemns. And for Medea too is vengeance wrought. With him go those that in this way deceive. Be this enough to know of this first ditch, and of those two that in its fangs it holds.
Already were we where the narrow path forms with the second bank across, and makes therewith abutments for another arch. We thence heard people in the following trench who whined and groaned, and with their muzzles puffed, while smiting their own bodies with their palms. The banks were crusted over with a mould by vapour from below, which, sticking there, offensive to both eyes and nose became. So deep the bottom that there is no means of looking into it, unless one climb the arch's summit, where the crag is highest. Thither we came, and from it in the ditch people I saw immersed in excrement, which seemed from human privies to have come. While peering with mine eyes down there, I saw a head so foul with filth, that whether clerk's or layman's head it were, was not apparent. Scolding, he said,
Why greedier art thou to look at me than at the other foul ones?
And I, because if I remember well, I've seen thee with dry hair ere now, for thou Alessio Intermine of Lucca art. That's why I eye thee more than all the rest. And he then, as he beat upon his pate,
Those flatteries immersed me here below, wherewith my tongue was never surfeited.
Then, after this, my leader said to me,
See that thou urge thy glance a little further, that with thine eyes thou quite attain the face of that disgusting and dishevelled wench, who yonder claws herself with filthy nails, and crouches now, and now is on her feet. That Thais is, the prostitute, who answered her paramour when he had said, Have I great thanks from thee? Nay, marvellously great. Herewith, then, let our sight be satisfied.
End of Inferno, Canto 18. Section 19 of the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, translated by Courtney Langdon. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Inferno, Canto 19. The Eighth Circle, Fraud. The Third Trench, Simoniacs.
O Simon Magus, O his wretched followers, since ye the things of God, which ought to be the brides of righteousness, rapaciously adulterate for silver and for gold, it now behooves the trumpet sound for you, for in the third great trench your station is. We now had climbed the next tomb-spanning bridge, and were on that part of the crag which hangs directly o'er the middle of the trench. Wisdom supreme, how great the art thou showest in heaven, on earth, and in the evil world! How justly too thy virtue makes awards! I saw that on its sloping sides and bottom the livid-coloured stone was full of holes, all of one width, while each of them was round. Nor less nor more wide did they seem to me than those which in my beautiful St. John's are made as places for baptizing priests, and one of which not many years ago I broke to save one who was choking in it, be this a witness undeceiving all. Out of the mouth of each a sinner's feet protruded, and as far as to the calf his legs, the rest of him remained within. The souls of all were, both of them, on fire, because of which their joints so strongly twitched they would have snapped green twigs and cords of grass. And as a flame on oily things is wont to move along the outer surface only, so likewise was it there from heels to toes. Who, teacher, is he yonder who is tortured by twitching more than all the rest, his mates? Said I, and whom a redder flame is sucking. And he to me,
If thou wouldst have me bear thee down yonder bank which lowest lies, from him thou'lt know both of himself and of his sins.
And I, what pleases thee I like. My lord thou art, and that I part not from thy will thou know'st, as also what is left unsaid. We then upon the fourth embankment came, and turning round, descended on our left into that narrow bottom pierced with holes. Nor yet did my good teacher set me down from off his back, but brought me to the hole of him who grieved so sorely with his shank. Whoe'er thou art, sad soul, that holdest down thine upper portion, planted like a stake, I then began, say something if thou canst. I there was like a friar that confesses a base assassin, who on being planted calls him again, that death may be delayed. And he cried out,
Dost thou stand there already? Dost thou stand there already, Boniface? By several years the writing lied to me. Art thou so quickly sated with the wealth for which thou didst not fear to seize by fraud, and outrage next the Lady Beautiful?
Even such did I become as those are who, not understanding what is answered them, deem themselves mocked, and think of no reply. Then Virgil said,
Tell him immediately, I'm not the one, I'm not the one thou thinkest.
and I replied to him as I was bidden. Whereat the spirit writhed with both his feet. Then sighing and with weeping voice, he said,
What is it then that thou dost ask of me? If to know who I am concern thee so, that for it thou hast crossed the bank, know then that I was with the mighty mantle clothed, and verily the she-bear's son was I, so eager to advance the cubs, that wealth I pocketed up there, and here myself. The others, who in working simony preceded me, are gathered neath my head, flattened between the fissures of the rock. I, in like manner, shall down yonder fall, when he arrives, whom I believed thou wast, when I of thee the sudden question asked. But now already longer is the time that I thus upside down have cooked my feet, than he will planted stay with ruddy souls. For after him shall come from westward lands a lawless shepherd of still uglier deed, and fit to cover him and me. Renewed shall Jason be, of whom in Maccabees one reads. And as to that one his king yielded, even so who governs France shall yield to this.
I know not whether I was here too bold, in that I answered him in this strain only. Now tell me, pray, how great the treasure was our Lord demanded of St. Peter first, before he placed the keys in his control. Surely he asked for naught but follow me. Nor yet did Peter or the rest take gold or silver from Matthias, when by lot he took the place the guilty soul had lost. Therefore keep still, for thou art rightly punished. And take good care of that ill-gotten wealth which caused thee to be valiant against Charles. And were it not for this, that I am still forbidden by reverence for the keys supreme thou hadst in keeping in the joyful life, words of still greater weight would I employ, because your greed, by trampling on the good and raising the depraved, afflicts the world. The evangelist was thinking of your shepherds, when she, who on the waters hath her seat, was seen by him to fornicate with kings. The one who with the 7 heads was born, and from the 10 horns her support received, while virtue still was pleasing to her spouse. Ye've made yourselves a god of gold and silver, and from idolaters how differ ye, save that they worship one, and ye 100. Ah, Constantine, of how much ill was mother, not thy conversion, but the dower gift the earliest wealthy father took from thee. While I was singing him such notes as these, he, whether it were wrath or conscience bit him, was fiercely kicking out with both his feet. I verily believe it pleased my leader, he heeded with so glad a look throughout the utterance of those true, clear words of mine. He therefore took me up with both his arms, and when he had me wholly on his breast, he climbed again the path down which he came. Nor tired of holding me in his embrace, but bore me to the summit of the arch, which crosses from the 4th bank to the 5th. When there, he gently set his burden down, gently because that crag was rough and steep, and would be difficult for goats to cross. From thence another trench was shown to me.
End of Inferno, Canto 19. Section 20 of the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, translated by Courtney Langdon. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Inferno, Canto 20. The 8th Circle. Fraud. The 4th Trench. Diviners and Soothsayers.
About strange punishments must I make verses, and furnish matter for the 20th song of this first lay, which treats of those submerged. Already had I wholly given myself to looking down at its uncovered bottom, which with the tears of agony was bathed, when people in the great round trench I saw come weeping silently, and at the pace at which in this world litanies advance. Then, as my sight fell on them lower down, wondrously twisted each of them appeared between the chin and where the chest begins. For toward his loins his face was turned around, and backward it behoved him to advance, because of foresight they had been deprived. By palsy some, perhaps, may thus have been entirely turned around, but I have not seen it, nor do I think there ever was one such. So may God let thee, reader, gather fruit from this thy reading. Think now for thyself how I could ever keep my own face dry, when at close range I saw our human image so twisted that the weeping of the eyes along the fissure bathed the back. Indeed, as on a rock of that hard crag I leaned, I wept so that my escort said to me,
Art thou still foolish as the others are? Here liveth piety, when wholly dead is pity. Who then guiltier is than he who lets his feelings judge divine decrees? Lift thy head, and see the man for whom, before the Trojans' eyes, the earth was opened, whence all cried, Whither art thou rushing now, Amphiaraus? Why quittest thou the war? And he ceased not from plunging headlong down to Minos, who lays hold on every one. See how he makes a bosom of his shoulders, because he wished to see too far ahead, he looks behind, and backward goes his way. Behold Tiresias there, who changed his looks when female he became from being male, his members being each and all transformed. And afterward he needs must strike again the two entwining serpents with his rod, ere he the plumage of a male regained. He who to that one's belly turns his back is Aruns, who in Luni's mountain quarries, where toils the Carrese who dwells below, among white marbles had as dwelling place a cave, from which his view was not cut off when at the stars he gazed, or at the sea. And she who yonder with dishevelled locks covers the breasts which thou dost not behold, and has on that side all her hairy skin, was Manto, who first searched through many lands, then settled in the place where I was born. Thereof I'd have thee hear me speak a little. After her father had from life departed, and Bacchus' city had become enslaved, she wandered long about the world. Up there in lovely Italy, beneath the Alps, which o'er the Tyrol lock out Germany, there lies a lake which is Benaco called. From o'er 1,000 springs, I trow, tween Garda and Valcamonica, the Pennine Alp is bathed by waters which therein find rest. A midway place there is where Trento's shepherd, and he of Brescia, and the Veronese, might each his blessing give, if there he went. Peschiera next, a fair and mighty fortress, and fit to face both Bergamasques and Brescians, sits where the shore lies lowest round about. There all that in Benaco's spacious lap cannot be held flows out of it perforce, and down through verdant pastures forms a stream. When once its water gathers head to run, no more Benaco, Mincio is its name, till at Governolo it joins the Po. Not long its course before it finds low ground, o'er which it spreads, and, making it a marsh, is wont at times to be unsound in summer. Passing that way, the cruel virgin saw a region in the middle of the fen, untilled and naked of inhabitants. There, to escape all human fellowship and work her arts, she settled with her slaves, and lived, and there she left her empty body. Thereafter men, who all around were scattered, collected in that place, which was a strong one, because it had a fen on every side. O those dead bones of hers they built a town. Then, after her, who first picked out the site, they called it Mantua, with no other lot. The people in it were more numerous once, before the foolishness of Casalodi had been deceived by Pinamonte's guile. I charge thee then, if e'er thou hear it said, my town had its beginning otherwise, permit no falsehood to defraud the truth.
Thy statements, teacher, are so sure to me, said I, and take such hold upon my faith, that those of others would be burnt out coals. But tell me if among these passing people thou seest any one deserving note, for my mind now is wholly bent on that. He told me then,
the one who from his cheeks extends his beard across his swarthy shoulders, an augur was, when Greece lacked males so much that for her cradles only few were left. 'Twas he who set, with Calchas' aid, at Aulis the time to cut the fleet's first rope. His name Eurypylus, and in a certain place he thus is called by my high tragedy. This thou knowest well, who knowest all of it. That other one, so thin about his flanks, was Michael Scott, who surely understood the artful game of magical deceits. Guido Bonatti see, and see Asdente, who wishes now that he had given heed to cord and leather, but too late repents. See the sad women who abandoned needles, spindles, and shuttles to become diviners. These wrought their spells with herbs and images. But now, come on, for Cain is with his thorns holding the bounds of both the hemispheres, and plays upon the waves below Seville, and round already was the moon last night. Thou surely must recall it, since at times it harmed thee not, when in the dark wood's depths.
Thus he to me, as meanwhile on we went.
End of Inferno, Canto 20. Section 21 of the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, translated by Courtney Langdon. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Inferno, Canto 21. The Eighth Circle, Fraud. The Fifth Trench, Corrupt Politicians.
Speaking of other things my comedy cares not to sing, we thus from bridge to bridge moved on, and when upon the summit, stopped, in order to behold the next ravine of Male Bolge, and the next vain cries. And I beheld it wonderfully dark, and just such sticky pitch as that which boils in the Venetian's arsenal in winter, for caulking up again the unsound ships which cannot then be sailed, instead of which, as one a new one builds, one plugs the ribs of that which many voyages has made, one hammers at the stern, and at the prow another. One fashions oars, another cordage twists, while still another mends a jib or mainsail. Such was the coarse, dense pitch, which, not by fire, but by an art divine, boiled there below, and limed the bank on every side. I saw the pitch, but nothing in it save the bubbles the boiling raised, and that the whole of it kept swelling up, and settling back compressed. While I was gazing fixedly down yonder, my leader cried to me, "Beware, beware!" and drew me to himself from where I was. I then turned round as one who longs to see the thing which it behooves him to escape, and who, when by a sudden fear unmanned, although he sees, delays not his departure. And I perceived behind us a black devil come running up along the rocky crag. Ah, how ferocious in his looks he was, and in his actions how severe he seemed, with wings outspread and light upon his feet. His shoulder, which was sharp and high, was loaded with both a sinner's haunches, whom he held clutched tightly by the sinews of his feet.
"Oh, Malebranche!"
From our bridge he cried,
"Here's one of Santa Zita's ancients. Put him beneath, for I'm for more of them returning to that town which I have well stocked therewith. There, save Bonturo, everyone's a grafter. A no for money there becomes a yes."
He hurled him down, and o'er the rugged crag returned, and never was a mastiff loosed with so much hurry to pursue a thief. The other sank, and then rose, doubled up. Those fiends, though, who were sheltered by the bridge, cried,
"Here the holy face availeth not."
"One here swims otherwise than in the Serchio." If therefore thou dost not desire our hooks, protrude not from the surface of the pitch.
They pricked him then with o'er 100 prongs, and said,
Here under cover must thou dance, that, if thou canst, thou mayest thieve secretly.
Not otherwise do cooks have scullions plunge the meat with hooks into the cauldron's midst, to hinder it from floating on its surface. Thereat my kindly teacher said to me,
That here thy presence be not known, crouch down behind a rock, which may avail to screen thee. And be not thou afraid for any harm that may be done to me, who know these things, for I in phrase like this have been before.
He then passed on beyond the bridge's head, and when the 6th embankment had been reached, he had to show assurance in his face. With just the storm and fury wherewith dogs break out and rush upon a poor old man, who stops and begs at once from where he is. From neath the little bridge those devils issued, and turned against him all their grappling hooks. But he cried out,
Be none of you malicious. Before your grappling hooks take hold of me, let one of you advance and hear me speak. Then take ye counsel as to grappling me.
Then all cried out,
Let Malacoda go!
Thereat one started, while the rest kept still, and as he came said,
What does this avail him?
Dost thou think, Malacoda,
said my teacher,
that as thou seest I have hither come, safe until now from all your hindrances, unheld by will divine and favouring fate? Let us go on, for it is willed in heaven that I should show another this wild road.
Thereat his pride received so great a fall that at his feet he dropped his grappling hook, and to the rest said,
Let him not be wounded.
My leader thereupon cried out to me,
Thou that among the bridge's broken rocks art crouching, safely now regain my sight.
I therefore moved, and quickly came to him. Then all the fiends advanced so far, I feared they would not keep their word. Even thus I once saw infantry, who under pledge of safety were from Caprona coming forth, afraid, when 'mong so many foes they saw themselves. Then wholly to my leader's side I drew, nor from their faces, which did not look good, did I remove my eyes. For as their prongs they lowered, one fiend to another said,
Wouldst thou that I should touch him on his rump?
And they replied,
Yes, see thou nick it for him.
But that fiend who was with my leader talking turned round at once and said to him,
Keep still there, Scarmiglione.
Then to us,
Further advance along this present crag cannot be made, because the 6th arch yonder lies wholly shattered on the ground below. But if it please you still to go ahead, go on along this ridge. There is nearby another crag which furnishes a path. Than this hour, 5 hours later yesterday, 1260 years had passed since here the path was broken. I am sending some of my company in that direction, to see if any yonder air themselves. Go on with them, for they will not be bad. Step forward, Alecchino and Calcabrina.
he then began to say,
Thou too, Cagnazzo, and that old Barbariccia guide the 10. Have Libicoco go, and Dragignazzo, tusked Ciriato too, and Graffiacane, with Farfarello and crazy Rubicante. Search round about the boiling birdlime pitch, that these be safe as far as that next crag, which all unbroken goes across the den.
O teacher, what is this I see? Said I. If thou know how, pray let us go alone, for I request no escort for myself. If thou as wary art as thou art wont, dost thou not notice how they gnash their teeth, and with their eyebrows threaten us with woe? And he to me,
I would not have thee frightened. Let them grin on, then, as they like, for that they're doing at the wretches who are boiled.
They wheeled and moved along the left bank then, but not till each, as signal toward their leader, had first thrust out his tongue between his teeth, and he had of his rump a trumpet made.
End of Inferno, Canto 21.
Hello, we're back. So that was the end of Dante's Inferno 21. There's so much left. Oh my gosh. There's the last one is up to 34. So there's still another way too many left. Anyway, that's all right. I put myself into it without even looking, so you know, that's what I deserve, I suppose. But as you can see, or as you know, I had did quite a bit of a chain, and it turned out to end up being not long enough. So I undid it, and I'm doing a foundation single crochet row, and then I can stop wherever I need to, and it's going to be long enough. And so I need to go for another bother. I need to go for another. So it's just over 6.5 for my arm. So I need to go for another, probably, I would say, I'm having definite technical difficulties. So I need to go for another inch, it looks like. Ish. You know, somewhere around there. Anyway, so what I was doing a rainbow bracelet, hence the other colors, and put a pot of gold at the end of it, being a gold button. I don't have one apparently, so I'm gonna go upstairs and see if my landlady has one, because she's offered me the use of her buttons because she doesn't sew much anymore. So I'm gonna go find a button, and when I am done, I'll release the pattern for the shamrock, and I'll release the pattern for the rainbow bracelet. I'll probably release the pattern on my WordPress website for free, but if you want to print it, it'll probably be about $1 to do it up as a PDF file. So it'll be $1, maybe $2. It'll depend on how much work. There's a lot of work that goes into this, so but it won't be anything way expensive. Yeah, and we'll see. Like I said, if it's not too bad to do up the instructions, it won't be much. Anyway, I hope you guys have an absolutely wonderful day, a great weekend, and I hope you're having a wonderful evening this evening. Bye.